Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. My name is Colleen Hutchinson, and I am the Interim Assistant Director at the International Student Services Office and your moderator for today. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone from around the world to our International Student Information Session. During this session, we hope to cover a variety of scenarios and questions posed by international students and families. Thank you to those of you who completed our Fall 2021 enrollment plan, where we received those questions. If you have not already submitted your Fall 2021 enrollment plan, there is still time to complete it. Please log in to Teradata as soon as possible and complete that. This session is being recorded today. The recording, the Fall 2021 enrollment plan, and many of the resources and links will be at go.wisc.edu/international-session. The link is also at the bottom of your screen. You can also view captions or English subtitles on the events description on YouTube. Now, to introduce our panelists who are with us tonight, we have Diana Mackey, Director of Academic Affairs for the Office of Undergraduate Advising, Samantha McCabe, Director of International Student Services. We have Carol Griggs, Director of Operations of University Health Services. And finally, Malia Q, Admissions and Academic Services Coordinator in the Graduate School. Thank you all for joining this event. I know all of us here, along with countless colleagues across campus, are excited to welcome international students back and to provide support into the coming academic year. To start, I'd like to ask Diana Mackey to begin by providing us an overview of where the campus is in terms of our academic planning for the coming semester. Diana?
Thank you, Colleen. Yes, as you can probably imagine, as a campus, we're working really hard to prepare for the fall 2021 semester. Most of us, many of us, spent a lot of this past year in our homes, and here at UW, we're just really excited to welcome everyone back to the campus in the fall. As you've hopefully probably seen in the Chancellor's messages over the past couple of months, UW-Madison is returning to primarily in-person classes for the fall. So one thing that we really want to get across to you today is we know that some of you have concerns or barriers to making it to Madison. And so because of this, we are working on potential limited enrollment contingencies for undergraduate international students who find that you're unable to get here due to visa issues. In order for us to help plan for those contingencies and for us to know what kind of plans might be needed, and in order to know who they might be needed for, we do need you to fill out that fall enrollment plan in Teradata that Colleen mentioned earlier. If we don't know who can't make it, and then it's going to make it really hard for us to plan for possible contingencies. So what should you do now? The first thing, again, is to fill out that enrollment plan. We're going to say this a lot, but this really is the best way for you to help us plan. The other thing I want to mention is if your situation changes, if you filled that out and something changes, you can and you should fill it out again to keep us updated on the most recent status of your plans. Secondly, if you haven't already, you should enroll full-time in in-person classes. For those of you who are concerned about getting to Madison, we will have more information for you coming in the next month. But until then, fill out that enrollment plan, enroll in classes, and we'll have more information for you shortly. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Colleen.
Great, thank you, Diana. I'll now ask Samantha McCabe to share some information on visas, immigration, and travel. Samantha?
Great, thank you, Colleen, and thank you, Diana, for that primer on how UW-Madison is planning for our fall 2021 semester. So as Diana mentioned, we are planning a return to primarily in-person courses this coming semester. And as Diana and Colleen have both mentioned, we are planning based on the information that international students provide in their responses to our fall 2021 enrollment plan through Teradata and addressing the concerns that students have submitted through their plan excuse me, so that we can plan accordingly for international students who are facing visa acquisition barriers due to COVID-19 and some of the diplomatic issues that we are seeing that are now causing consular and embassy closures, as well as COVID-related travel restrictions that are preventing or either preventing students from entering the US or making it much more costly and cost prohibitive to make last-minute travel plans to come to campus. I first want to address the full-time enrollment for international students with our return to primarily in-person instruction for the fall semester. We have enjoyed some flexibility and relaxation in federal regulations over the past year as our campus instruction was primarily online and hybrid. Now that we're returning to in-person instruction, we are returning to pre-COVID immigration regulations for our F1 and our J1 international students. The table here on the slide is the minimum full-time enrollment credits that an international student holding an F1 or a J1 visa inside the US needs to enroll in. And there are minimum in-person credits that are required to maintain that F1 immigration status. For example, an undergraduate student is required to have 12 credits. 9 of those credits must be in person for our F1 undergraduate students. Graduate students without an assistantship are required to enroll in a minimum of 8 credits for immigration purposes, and 5 of those credits must be in person. You'll see that those graduate students with assistantships, specifically a teaching assistantship or a project assistantship, may have redefined minimum full-time enrollment requirements. International students with an approved ISS reduced course load may also have different minimum full-time enrollment requirements as compared to what you see there on the screen. We do know that there are several barriers to getting an F1 or a J1 visa to come to campus for that in-person instruction for fall. As Diana mentioned, we are collecting this information, including current visa expiration dates or current visa appointment dates in that fall 2021 enrollment plan, and students can go back and edit that plan, their previous submission. You can edit those responses as that information changes. But this is the best source of information that we have to plan those contingencies for our international student population. Many of the US consulates and embassies have announced that they are accepting visa appointments for international student visas. This is a visa category that many of the US embassies and consulates around the world are attempting to prioritize, as it is safe to do so based on local conditions on the ground, especially around COVID. So we know that even though as they're announcing that visa appointments are resuming, that those visa appointments may then be moved or canceled more last minute for students. We've seen this happen several times, and it continues to happen as conditions improve on the ground and then perhaps conditions change. So please continue to keep that plan updated. And we will continue to review that information on a weekly basis here on campus and inform departments and instructors accordingly. We do also know that there are many COVID-related and geographic COVID-related travel restrictions that are impacting many of our international students who are currently outside the US. There are a list of countries here on the screen that do have those COVID-19 travel restrictions. If a student or an individual in general, I'm going to talk specifically about international students because that's the population that we serve at ISS, but it is not just restricted to international students with these geographic COVID-19 travel restrictions. But if a student is physically present in China, Iran, the European Schengen area, the United Kingdom, Ireland, Brazil, South Africa, or India 14 days prior to their entry to the US, those travelers will not be able to travel directly from one of those countries and into the US. There are specific exceptions. This is called a national interest exception waiver. This information has been fluctuating over the past couple of months. So I definitely advise all students to go to our resources page as you get closer to that travel, because the national interest exception and those COVID-19 travel restrictions have been a bit fluid, and the guidance has been changing from the US government. What we know today is that this national interest exception for those countries that were just on the screen, the NIE applies to students with a valid F1 or J1 student visa who will begin or resume their program of study on or after August 1st. So we are in luck. UW-Madison's classes start. For our new students, they'll start. And for our continuing students, they will resume on September 8th. So lucky for us, we are after that August 1st date. The national interest exception also applies to students who are impacted, again, by those geographic specific travel restrictions for COVID-19 that were on that previous slide. If a student, an F1 student or J1 student, wishes, and this would primarily be for continuing students, wishes to enter or attempt to enter the US before August 1st for an academic activity, including optional practical training for our F1 students, that will resume before August 1st. They will need to apply for the national interest exception waiver at a US consulate or embassy. If an F1 student specifically will be traveling on or after August 1st, they do not need to apply for the national interest exception waiver at the US consulate or embassy. J1 students must apply at any time. On the next slide, we have a timeline, a visual timeline for you to follow. As I mentioned, our classes start on September 8th, 2021. The national interest exception information that has come out has had this August 1st date on it, which is quite confusing because 30 days before September 8th is August 9th. August 9th is the earliest date that any of our new students with an initial attendance I-20 or DS 2019, so anyone who is newly admitted to UW-Madison to begin their program in fall 2021, including our re-entry admits, the earliest date that you can enter the US is always 30 days before the program start date. So that's August 9th. With this national interest exception language out there, our continuing students, again, in those specific travel restriction countries, can enter the US up to 30 days before our classes start or resume. And that is also August 9th. So August 9th is really the date that all of our students in those COVID-related travel restriction countries, plus all of our new international students, both in F1 and J1 status, the earliest that you can enter is August 9th. When it comes to travel, there are general travel guidelines and documents that all students should carry with them at all times. This is not specific to COVID, but this is anytime an international student travels. We do have an additional document that we are providing to our international students in support of the visa acquisition and travel to the U.S., given all of this COVID-19 confusion and different rules and regulations changing. So documents that all of our international students should carry with them: a valid passport. It is recommended that your passport be valid for at least 6 months into the future at all times, even if your country of citizenship is on what we call the 6-month club. You should also have a valid F1 or J1 visa. Apologies, J1 visa is not explicitly spelled out there on the screen. That's my bad. But a valid F1 or a J1 visa stamp in the passport, except for our students from Canada who are not required to have a visa. Proof of your SEVIS I-901 fee payment. That fee must be paid for each unique SEVIS ID on your I-20 or DS 2019 if you are an F1 or a J1 student. Diana had mentioned and urged all of our students to enroll full-time and in-person classes. It is recommended that you print that and from your student center, and you carry that with you when you travel. You'll also want to travel with your most recently issued I-20 or DS 2019. I-20s are being electronically issued to students, and those I-20s are valid for your visa interview, appointment, and your travel into the US. DS 2019s for visa appointments and travel should be the hard copy. And that letter that I mentioned, the fall 2021 support letter for international student travel and visa acquisition, is a letter that the International Student Services Office is providing, and I have signed as our principal designated school official for our campus for our F1 students to attest to our mode of instruction, our in-person instruction for fall semester, to support the visa acquisition and travel of all of our students attempting to come to the US for their in-person instruction for fall semester. You can find that at the link that was provided at the beginning of this session, as well as on the ISS COVID-19 updates page. That link is available for, or that letter, I'm sorry, is available for download. I think that wraps up now how we are planning and how we are advising international students to enroll, addressing some of the visa acquisition concerns. We do have a list of U.S. consulates and embassies and the current wait times, and if they are open or open only for emergency appointment. Again, that link will be provided at the end of this session. And the review of the COVID-19 travel restrictions and what we know now today about the national interest exception waiver. Colleen, back to you.
Great. Thanks for that insight, Sam. I would just like to make a quick correction. It is correct on the screen that of our events page link. It is go.wisc.edu/international-info. So all of our links and resources will be there for you and everything that we're referring to today. Now I'd like to pass it over to Carol Griggs, who will share a little information on campus health and safety. Carol?
Thank you, Colleen. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone that's joining today. I did want to take some time to talk us through just some of the public health protocols that we will have in place when students are arriving from international locations. I think it's important to really think through how the pandemic experience has been different in a lot of different places. Many of you are located in areas where vaccines might not be available at the same rate that they currently are here in the United States of America. And that does result in our experience of the pandemic being a little bit different. And so if we could focus in on what that experience is here in the United States, I think that would be a good idea so that we can prepare you as you transition here for school in the fall. So here in Madison right now, our vaccination rates are really good. Because the vaccination rates are so good, that has enabled us to have the capacity to adjust some of our public health protocols. So right now in Madison, we do not have mandates in place for things like mask and social distance, even though I know that in a lot of international locations, those things are still in place. We've been able to do that because of our vaccination rate and because of the availability of vaccines that are here in the United States for people that live here in the United States. That said, when students arrive, you will have access to the same vaccines that we do have here in the United States of America. Currently, under the FDA emergency use authorization, we have 3 vaccines that we have authorization to administer. There's Moderna, we have Pfizer, and then we have Johnson & Johnson. So when students arrive, those vaccines will be available. But let's talk a little bit through what that means. So many students currently are in international locations, and there are vaccines available where you are located. If you are vaccinated with a vaccine by an organization that is recognized under the World Health Organization emergency use listing, and you have completed that vaccine series, and you're 14 days post that vaccine, the last vaccine administration, here, when you arrive, we will still consider that fully vaccinated. So again, if you've been vaccinated with a vaccine that's on the World Health Organization emergency use listing, when you get here, if you've completed the series, we will consider that fully vaccinated. If you've been vaccinated with a vaccine that is not on the emergency use listing under the World Health Organization, when you get here, you should contact University Health Services so that we can help you manage the next steps and how you need to acquire or achieve that status of fully vaccinated. Because there are so many different vaccines available, that is something that we somewhat have to talk you through. And so it is important that you just contact University Health Services so that we can assist you with that. When you think about travel, students who are traveling or any individual that's traveling, as you enter the United States of America, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, they have standard guidelines that are available that help us to ensure that as you come into the state or into the country, that we're managing you in such a way where we can really reduce the risk of potential transmission, and also just ensure that you didn't in any kind of way contract COVID as you were traveling. And so when you enter the country, the CDC requires that you, or recommends rather, that you self-quarantine for 7 days. When you self-quarantine, this is a different type of quarantine than what a standard quarantine would be. If you were here last year and you had to quarantine, you know that the way that we manage quarantine on campus was very strict. That's not what I'm referring to. When you come to the United States, you would self-quarantine. That means that you manage your own quarantine period. During that time, it's really important that you only engage in essential activity. And so you reduce all interactions with all other people for that 7-day time period. And on days between days 3 and 5, you should actually go get a COVID test. What that does is if you actually did have an exposure while you were traveling, and you did contract the virus, it will enable us to catch it early enough so that we can reduce the potential for transmission to anyone else that you might interact with. And so again, when you arrive in the United States, you're going to want to self-quarantine for 7 days. However, on days between days 3 and 5 after you've arrived here, you're going to want to go get a COVID test. We will have COVID testing available on campus. Stay tuned for more information on that. It should be available in July, August at the latest. But you will be able to come to campus and get your COVID test. After you get your COVID test result, as long as it's negative, you should be able at that point to seek a vaccine. We will also have vaccines available on campus, and you can get a vaccine through one of our walk-up clinics, or you can schedule an appointment for a vaccine. With that, it's really important that you let us know if you've been vaccinated with any other vaccines. We have guidance from the DHS department that's here in the state of Wisconsin, and we pay close attention to what their recommendations are, because they're actually the organization that help us to understand the best way to get you to a fully vaccinated status. And so it's really important that you let us know if you've been vaccinated with anything else, so that we can ensure that we're managing your care to the best of our ability. And so once you arrive in the United States, and it's really important, honestly, for you to provide your documentation to us in advance before you get here. To submit your vaccine information, you can go to My UHS. You can go to the UW-Madison UHS website, and you can click on My UHS. My UHS is your access to our patient portal, and that will enable you to also submit your vaccination records. We should have information available on that on the UW-Madison website. But again, you can always contact University Health Services directly, and we can help you. And so if you have any questions related to your specific vaccines, don't worry. The best thing to do is just to contact University Health Services directly, so that we can explain to you what the next best step is going to be to get you to a fully vaccinated status. Students that are here on campus in the fall semester, we don't have a testing requirement currently in place for students that live off campus, but for students that live on campus, there will be a testing requirement in place for those that are not fully vaccinated. For students that are fully vaccinated, the only testing requirement that you will have is a move-in testing requirement, and that's, again, if you live on campus. But once you complete your move-in test, and if you, again, are fully vaccinated, and that's fully vaccinated with a vaccine that's authorized by the FDA for emergency use authorization, or that's recognized by the World Health Organization on their emergency use listing. Those are the only two entities that we focus on when we look at fully vaccinated status. If you're vaccinated with a vaccine that's not on one of those lists, then we don't consider that fully vaccinated. And so when you arrive, we'll have to work with you to get you to a point where you're fully vaccinated, or if you should choose not to be vaccinated, if you live on campus, you will have to test. If you do not live on campus, you do not have to test, but it's really important that you still abide by the public health protocols. And so that's going to be wearing a mask and ensuring that you're taking care of yourself, social distancing where you can, and just ensuring that you're protecting yourself to the best of your ability. And so if you have questions, again, I know there's a lot of information out there. The best way to get your questions answered is going to be to contact University Health Services so that we can help you directly. I think that's it for the public health recommendations and kind of protocols that we have. So I think I'll hand it back over to Colleen.
Great, thank you. That was a lot of great information. And it was really helpful to learn about the Wisconsin Department of Health Services and everything, all the other folks that are involved in that. So thank you for pulling that all together. Finally, I'd like to ask Malia Q from graduate school to share any additional information for our graduate students.
Thank you, Colleen. Yes, so we're excited about your return to campus. So in order to successfully do that and continue your academic progress, we want to say complete your fall 2021 enrollment plan. Diana already said it, so we just want to make sure that we really emphasize that completing your fall 2021 enrollment plan is going to make sure that we know everything about your information for enrolling and then any barriers you may be encountering. And also remember to update your responses as your information changes. Also, we want to make sure that you enroll full-time in in-person courses. So we're returning to campus to in-person courses on campus. So you need to be enrolled for full-time in-person courses. If you have any questions or any difficulties with your enrollment, make sure that you talk to your graduate program and your graduate coordinator. And then lastly, we want to make sure that you watch your email for additional steps. That's going to be the way that we communicate with you. So continue to watch for that and also reach out if you ever have any questions. And that's all for me.
Perfect, thank you. I think lastly, we have some questions that were asked by our students and their families that I will ask our panelists to answer now for you. I think the first one will be for Sam. So if a student needs to make a visa appointment and wants to request an emergency appointment, can UW-Madison support that emergency visa appointment, and how?
It's a great question, and a very common question that we're getting now, that the visa appointment slots are filling up very quickly, and also changing or being canceled. So our Fall 2021 support letter for international student travel and visa acquisition is a great letter for students to download, pair with their proof of enrollment that they can download from their student center to schedule the visa appointment. It does address that our classes start on September 8th, and all of our international students are expected to arrive on campus no later than September 8th for the start of classes. And that letter is a great support letter to take with you, and that is available to any of our international students. So again, that can be found at the go.wisc.edu link that has been shared here, and again at the bottom of the screen, thank you, and on the ISS COVID-19 updates page.
A quick follow-up for that, Sam. Students may be issued electronic I-20s or potential DS 2019s. Can they use this to apply for their visa and enter the U.S.?
Another great question, and possibly one positive silver lining that came out of COVID is our ability to issue I-20s to our F1 students electronically. We are uploading these to the students' Teradata portal for download by the student to print, sign in blue ink, sign your name on page 1 in blue ink, and then you can take that to your visa appointment, and you can use that to enter the US. It's completely acceptable. DS 2019s are a bit trickier. We are now able to provide certain DS 2019 information electronically to our J1 students. However, the DS 2019, if you need to apply for your J1 visa, should be the original hard copy. We do have express shipping available through a service provider called eShip Global. We do also have US mail available, but that does not come with a tracking number. So it will be helpful for students to request that hard copy DS 2019 from International Student Services early on in the process. But those electronic I-20s are acceptable for those visa appointments and travel into the US.
Perfect. Thank you. A quick note from for Carol. You mentioned contacting UHS. What is the best way for our students to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way is to email UHS directly, and that can be done at uhs@uhs.wisc.edu.
Perfect. Thank you. That'll be great comprehensive response. Okay, this one is for two of our panelists, undergrad for Diana, and after that, maybe Malia can comment for our graduate students as well. But a student maybe has been admitted for the fall semester and did not think they could get a visa in time and enroll. Is it possible to defer admission for one semester? Diana?
Okay, sure. So for new undergraduates, you can submit a request to defer your enrollment. That request has to be made by July 31st. In order to submit this request, you're going to follow steps on a website. It's a deferred enrollment website. That's another website that we're going to include on that website that we've referred to many times during this presentation. So if that's something that you want to do, you put in your request to that website. Once your request is reviewed, you'll hear back from undergraduate admissions with some next steps. So again, that deadline, if that's something you're interested in, is July 31st.
And then At the graduate school level, because we're a decentralized campus, you're going to direct those questions toward your program. So if your program is able to, you may be able to defer for a semester. It's also possible if your program only begins, say, in fall semester, you may be deferred for a year. That is only for graduate students. So make sure that you talk to your program and they will go over with you what your options are.
Great. Thank you to you both. Another one for you, Carol, is if a student is not fully vaccinated and living on campus, how often will they need to take the COVID test?
Yeah, sure. So for any student that is unvaccinated and living on campus, they will have to test at least once a week. In addition to that, I would also add that if a person is unvaccinated, their risk of transmission is higher. And so with that, if a person starts experiencing symptoms or if they have an exposure, even though they are testing once a week, they might have to test a little bit more just to ensure that they actually haven't caught COVID. That wouldn't necessarily be a requirement. That's more so a recommendation, but they would be required to test at least once a week.
Great. Thank you. Perfect. Sam, another one for you. Can a student arrive after September 8th? The fall 2021 semester begins September 8th, 2021. All students are expected to arrive by this date. So can they have any late arrivals?
Yes, we get this question every semester, global pandemic or not. And so our recommendation is always that all of our students arrive by the start date of classes. Even my cat agrees there. Ember is saying arrive to campus by September 8th, if at all possible. We do discourage late arrivals. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, they are the officers that review students' eligibility to enter the U.S. So they are looking for that valid visa, that I-20, or that DS 2019, in addition to those other documents that we mentioned early on. Customs and Border Protection is making the decision to allow you to enter the U.S. There is also a requirement for all new students. So if you are an initial attendance student, newly admitted for fall semester, re-entry admit for fall semester, or fall semester is your first semester that you're able to join us in person on campus, there is a requirement for you to complete your international student orientation and check-in with International Student Services within the first 15 days of the start date of classes. And so that is information that International Student Services is reporting to the U.S. federal government through your CVIS record, which is where your I-20 or DS 2019 is created. And we are reporting that you have arrived, you have checked in with ISS, you've completed our orientation materials, you are enrolled full-time in in-person classes. That's the information that we're reporting to the government. And so that is why the start date of classes and that being reported either as your program start date on your I-20 or DS 2019, or in CVIS as the next session start date for when classes resume, even though it's not printed on your I-20 or DS 2019, that is in the secure government database for Customs and Border Protection to see, as well as other Department of Homeland Security government agencies. There are also some academic concerns with arriving late as well. Diana, can you talk a little bit about what some of those concerns are for our undergraduate students and how late they may be able to arrive on campus?
Yeah, sure. So for undergraduate students, you may arrive up to what's called the 100% tuition refund deadline. And this year that date is September 17th. But in order to do that, you do need to get written permission from each of your instructors in order to arrive that late. As Sam mentioned, we really prefer you to arrive when the semester starts, because if you were to arrive as late as September 17th, that's a week and a half into classes. And so you will have missed a significant amount of coursework if you arrive that late. But it is possible to arrive that up to September 17th, but you do need written permission.
students can, oh, sorry, graduate students can arrive up to the 50% tuition deadline, which is October 1st. So in order to do that, you will also need written permission from each instructor and also your program coordinator. So that's something to make sure that you pay attention to. Like Diana said, for undergraduate students, you're missing a significant period of course time. So we want to make sure that we encourage everyone to get here by the September 8th deadline if possible, and only in extreme circumstances that if you're going to arrive late, you do so with written permission from your program coordinator and each instructor of the courses that you're taking.
Great. Thank you. I know we all want the students to succeed, so I think that's what's best for them in the long run. Next question is for Carol. A student may have received one vaccine dose, but in some cases would be unlikely to receive the second dose before traveling to Madison. What can they do?
Yeah, sure. So again, we have guidelines that we're following from the Department of Health Services in the state of Wisconsin that help us to figure out what the best next step is in your care. And so for a person who has received one dose of a vaccine series internationally, if that vaccine series is the same series that we have here in the United States for administration, then we can administer the second dose. However, if the vaccine that you received is not a vaccine that we can administer here in the United States of America, we have to work on the guidelines that we have from DHS, again, Department of Health and Human Services, to figure out the best way to get you fully vaccinated. I can say right now at this particular point in time, the guidelines that we have from DHS is to administer the FDA authorized vaccine. We have to do that 28 days after the last vaccine that you received. And that's just the information that we have today. But that only applies for folks that got vaccinated with a vaccine that's not on the World Health Organization emergency use listing. If it is on the World Health Organization's emergency use listing, that is fully vaccinated unless you only had one dose, which again, at that point, we'd have to work with the Department of Health and Human Services to get you fully vaccinated, which in essence would mean switching you to the series that we have here that's authorized for administration. And that does mean that you would have to complete that series that we are administering here. And so that would be 2 more shots. I'm sorry about that, but we have to follow those guidelines.
Thank you. I think one of our last ones was, we've had several questions about housing for students expressing difficulty finding on-campus housing. Since we didn't have anyone from housing able to join us this evening, I'll just read a short response from them. That overall, UW-Madison has seen an exceptionally high level of interest in coming to UW-Madison and specifically living on campus this year. We are anticipating a robust freshman class and high interest among returners from last year as well. Students are excited about that more typical on-campus experience this fall. And UW-Madison does not have any on-campus living requirements for undergraduate students. But each year, over 90% of first-year students choose to live in the residence halls. And as much as we do try to strive to accommodate as many as space allows. We have added some spaces where we are able, but the residence halls are at complete full capacity. Unfortunately, we do not expect to be able to add any additional on-campus housing from what we have previously done, as the residence halls are full. We do have a long wait list that we do not anticipate being able to accommodate for the year 2021 to 2022. Each year, our goal is to offer housing to as many students as are interested. We have a limited number of spaces and can only guarantee housing to those who were offered and completed a contract by the given deadline. We continue to closely monitor cancellations and would reach out to students through their WISC email with an update to any highly unlikely event that we reach on the waiting list. So if you do know you're on that waiting list, make certain that you are using your WISC email and checking that regularly. Campus area housing is a great resource that is on campus to assist students in seeking off-campus housing options as an alternative to the on-campus housing. Their website has an option to search for nearby housing and roommates. You can find their website linked on our page, on our events page for today. And I think this concludes the questions we received from before the session. Sam, would you like to start with any final remarks before we wrap up?
Yeah, thank you. I would just first like to thank everyone for coming to this session, either the live stream session or viewing this recording. I do want to acknowledge, we talked a lot about details about how we are planning for your academic success for the fall semester, acknowledging some of the barriers to visa acquisition and travel and entry to the US that many of our international students are facing. And regardless of where our students will be for fall semester, if that is on campus, and we hope that it is because we are so ready to welcome you back or welcome you for the first time to our campus. But for some of you, that may mean also learning online and engaging with us online. And I do want to let you all know that not only is International Student Services planning many different involvement activities for our international student population in a virtual format, in a hybrid format, or in an in-person format, but many other campus offices are also preparing for this inclusive engagement for our international students, again, on campus, especially our second year students or our students who started their studies online last academic year and have not been able to engage with our campus community in person and our vibrant environment that we have here in Madison, especially at the beginning of the fall semester as we welcome thousands of students onto our campus. These offices are also aware of the barriers that our international students face and acknowledge and recognize that some of our students may be our students enrolled in online courses when possible and engaging online. So watch out for our events calendar from International Student Services. We will launch that by mid-August, and several other campus departments will also be publishing their event calendars. And so watch for those online offerings, those hybrid offerings, as well as the in-person involvement, not only with our offices, but also with our registered student organizations, and engaging with our International Student Advisory Board to make sure that our campus is as inclusive of our international student body as possible. So thank you again for the opportunity to share this information with you all tonight and for those closing remarks.
Perfect. I'll pass it off to Carol. Any closing remarks for our folks online?
I don't know that I have anything specific other than just congratulating students on all the steps that they've taken over the course of the last year to really make it through this pandemic. It's really been a trying last 14, 15 months for all of us all over the world. And we're really looking forward here at UW-Madison to finding a new normal, finding the next normal. And so I strongly encourage students that as they navigate the terrain of working to get here to Madison, let us help you. If you have questions about the vaccines that you're considering or the vaccine that you received, or you just want to figure out what you need to do when you get here as far as testing and quarantine, or what it looks like when you come, if you're vaccinated versus unvaccinated, I strongly encourage you to reach out to University Health Services. Again, you can email us at uhs@uhs.wisc.edu. And we can help and answer your questions and just offer guidance to make this transition a lot easier for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Diana, any last words or notes for our students?
I don't think I have any last notes. I think I would just say, thank you for joining us here today. And whether you've been on campus before or you're joining us for the first time, I'm personally really excited to welcome you or to welcome you back to campus. So looking forward to seeing you soon.
Great. Malia?
I echo what everyone else said, that we look forward to seeing you all. And of course, please make sure that you complete that fall 2021 enrollment plan so that we can better prepare for your arrival. And we look forward to working with all of you.
Perfect. Thank you all panelists for joining us this evening. Thank you everyone for attending or watching our recording. If there are any questions you felt were unanswered, again, we encourage you to go to that events page, go.wisc.edu/information-info to view the many links and resources that we have for you. We look forward to welcoming you back to campus. Thank you.